Hello everybody, my name's Jim, and these are my Storygraph stats for the first half of 2023. I want to do these videos just to get them out of the way. I know that you guys are probably tired of me talking about the same books over and over and over again. So if you want to miss this, if you want to skip it, you want to go on to next week and just wait, you could do that. But I wanted to do this too because, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit easy to just kind of be here and look at the screen. I don't really have a plan for this video, but I'm also taking this week to write, and I want to focus on my writing. And also let me know if you want any videos about my writing process. I'm currently working on a book. I've said that a number of times. I almost sound obnoxious, but if you do want some videos about that too, just let me know. This isn't about that at all. This is about my stats for the first half of the year. Sometimes I don't trust Storygraph, so there are some widgets that I'm not going to really focus on in this video, but I do want to go over my moods for sure. And pace would be a good thing to talk about too. So let's go over my moods. I'm not the only one reading, apparently, because I'm reading a lot of emotional, reflective, dark, and sad books. It's nice to see lighthearted and hopeful books up there too, but I guarantee that if I click on these, that they're going to be children's books. Because when I first opened Storygraph, so what I do is I delete all of my books and all of my reviews so that I don't double up on anything in Storygraph, and then I export my information from Goodreads, because I'm usually a Goodreads user, and I import that information onto Storygraph whenever I need to see these stats. And there were a lot of children's books that were missing, and some of these wedges that are a bit more on the positive side were either non-existent or very small. So once I added those children's books, these thickened up a little bit, and I'm pretty positive that these happier pie wedges are gonna be children's books. But let's look at some of these moods and just see if I agree with any of these. So this one's the emotional one, and so far so good. I'm Afraid of Men, absolutely. Tanya, there's definitely an emotional part. The Cotton Candy Massacre, I don't know. Unless the emotion is, I don't want to say humor, but am I the only one who finds, like, for instance, zombie horrors funny? Because I found this funny. I found this to be kind of in the same vein, and it was just so silly and wacky and crazy that I thought it was funny. Maybe I'm just a messed up person. I don't know. So we'll see. I don't know. There is I guess there are some slightly emotional parts in this, but like I never really felt any emotion other than humor. Although there are two characters that I love in this book who maybe tugged at my heartstrings a little bit. Okay, fine. You know what? Maybe 2 minutes of emotion. Anyway, moving on. Lift, absolutely. As Familiar as Family, for sure. Oh my gosh. 1000%. I'm Glad My Mom Died, yes. I Go Quiet, I found this more reflective. I'm surprised to see this here. When I checked my Storygraph stats before I added my children's books that weren't added before, obviously this was not there. But emotional for I Go Quiet, I don't know. It's very well written. It's a great book, but I didn't feel any emotions to it. I felt seen. I felt reflective. I remembered a lot that I went through in school. I just thought it was sweet. I enjoyed that book. We are also good at smiling. It could be. I certainly felt seen reading this book. It was done in such a creative way. Like, reader's interpretation. I don't know if a lot of people necessarily understood what was going on in this book. I think that this definitely touches people who deal with depression and have these sorts of thoughts running through their heads. So, yeah, I'd say that this was emotional. Anxious people, yes. Clover, it had potential to be, but it wasn't ever really emotional for me. Yes, there was a death in the family that happened right at the beginning, so that's not a spoiler. You were thrown right into it immediately on the first page. So that I guess, but other than that, I don't know. It was really sweet, but I don't know if emotional is the word. But of course, again, my opinion is my opinion. So if you read Clover or any of these books that I'm saying aren't emotional, maybe you will find some emotion when you read it. The Red Tent, yes, there are some emotional parts in that as well. So let's look at some of the other ones. Actually, I don't want to look at reflective. Let's look at some of the positive. Let's look at funny. P is for pterodactyl, absolutely. This one's a really funny book. It's cute. I think that for children's books, you as adults out there watching this video, I think even you would appreciate this book. Anxious people, definitely funny as well. But there are some that are missing here, I think, because, like I said, Cotton Candy Massacre was funny for me. I don't know if I'm the only one who feels that zombie horror-esque sort of media is funny, but I thought it was funny. Horror Store was also funny. The furniture ads especially brought in some much needed humor, especially towards the end of the book. So I would include that in funny too. I'm not sure why people didn't label those as funny. Maybe not as often as other ones. Are there any other ones that I want to look at? Relaxing, I'm curious. Oh yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say I Go Quiet is relaxing. I didn't see that. I didn't see that pie wedge when I was looking at these before. So yeah, when I added I Go Quiet, I guess that's what it was. Informative. I don't know why this is just one. Going Under, absolutely, but I think that a lot of the memoirs that I read this year are informative, just solely for the fact that like these experiences are not mine most of the time. I think that people who ought to read the books, who maybe won't read the books, would be able to learn a bit more about, those experiences and those identities a little bit more. It's interesting to see that Going Under is the only informative book. I certainly agree, but there's some other ones that could fit in here too. And maybe it's because Storygraph only allows 2 of these, or like one main mood. Maybe. I don't know how Storygraph works. If somebody understands how this works a little bit more, then let me know. If they only allow one mood, then I don't know if I like that too much. But then I can understand how some of these stats could get a little bit crazy if you had too many moods in one book. So yeah, those are my moods. I don't think there's anything else I really want to look into. I could probably guess where the other ones are. But anyway, moving on. We're going to go to pace. 22% slow pace, 43% medium, and 35% fast. I'm curious to see which ones are fast. Cotton Candy Massacre, definitely at the end. Towards the middle to the end, absolutely fast. It takes off. But it's pretty slow in the beginning. There's a little bit of build-up. So, I don't know. I feel like this one might meet in the middle and be medium. But the end, really just, it takes off. Lift, I would agree, especially when she talks about her story and her friend's stories, like the main feature stories in this memoir. That definitely speeds the book up. And I've said it once, or I've said it multiple times. This book was over before I even realized it was. It's a short book anyway, but the fact that I got to the end and I was like, wait a minute, is this it? Like that says a lot. And every morning the way home gets longer and longer. I don't know. I think that's up to interpretation. It's a short book. I don't want to sit here and think that because a book is short, it's fast paced. I think that gets mixed up a little bit. because a book could be short, but it could still be slow paced or medium paced. And I'm kind of looking at these and seeing, not this one, but I'm kind of looking at these especially, and I see that these are very short books, and maybe people are interpreting them as fast paced, but they are actually short books. They are fast books. You get over them quickly, or you get through them quickly because of the page count. 26 pages, it's not 26 pages. This is a short book, though. I think this is less than 100, but it's not 26. I don't know what edition this is. But Yellow Wallpaper is another one that I would say is about medium paced. Again, a little towards the middle and the end, I think it starts to pick up a bit more, but there is some build up in the beginning. Horror Store, I agree. I'm Glad My Mom Died. Yes, I blazed through this memoir. I Go Quiet and read A Crayon Story. Yes, I Go Quiet. See, again, the sentence structure was very short. So that is what ramped up the pacing. But yeah, so I mostly agree with this. I just wonder sometimes if people mix up page count with pacing, because that's not really the same. But again, my opinion's my opinion. So let's look at what was actually medium. And see, I would consider this fast-paced because there was always something going on in The Love Bug. If an Egyptian cannot speak English, yes. Tanya was slow. I don't know. There were some. I guess there was one chapter that could have potentially been fast-paced, but I thought that this was so much of their day-to-day that it didn't seem fast to me. It seemed very slow. As Familiar as Family, I can see that being medium. Soul of the Deep, ooh. So Natasha Bowen in Soul of the Deep. So I need to look at Skin of the Sea after this and just see where people have rated that in terms of its pace. But for me, Soul of the Deep was pretty fast. Maybe kind of on the upper end of medium. Just because she threw you into the action immediately in this book. There wasn't a lot of build-up because a lot of the build-up happened in Skin of the Sea. So in this one, she was able to just go into the action, go into the fights. They were always traveling somewhere, and it always seemed like things were moving in the plot. So that's why I thought it was a bit more fast-paced, I guess, than this is labeling it. But maybe it is kind of on the upper end of medium. Going Under, again, this is, if it's medium paced, it's on the upper end. There was one part in this book that was a bit slower paced. I thought that would be a super slow section, but even that had a bit of action going on. So this is probably, I would say, on the upper side of medium at worst. We Are Also Good at Smiling. I can see that. Anxious People. I can see that behind her eyes. Oh my gosh. This one seems slow to me just because I didn't like it, but I guess I could see medium paced if people do enjoy reading this book. The Red Tent, yes. So the ending is a bit slower than the first two parts. So now let's look at slow. Let's see what people deem slow. I'm sorry if this is boring, but I'm just really interested in this sort of thing. I'm Afraid of Men, sure. So I do like seeing this, though. I like seeing that, this is a shorter book and people can say that this is slow. I did finish I'm Afraid of Men really quickly, but again, that could be page count. But I think that I related to it so much that it kept me turning the pages, because every time she brought something new up, I was like, yes, I was nodding along. So, and here are all the moods too. Okay, so maybe maximum 3. Again, if somebody understands Storygraph a little bit more than me, just let me know how many moods can be placed on a book. Chrysanthemum, slow, yes, I would agree with this too. It's a lot of going back and forth doing the same thing and dealing with the same situation, and the teacher not stepping in the way that she probably should. The Puzzle Master, slow, yes. So much exposition, yes. P is for pterodactyl. I don't know. Why is this one slow? It's literally just the alphabet. Um, this one doesn't seem very slow. It's funny. Like you go through it, it's funny. You want to see what the next page is going to be. So I would honestly put this on the opposite end. I thought that this was really funny. Maybe it would be slow for a kid, but also I would not say that this book is necessarily for the youngest of young kids because it is pretty goofy and you really don't want to screw up preschoolers with big words that don't make the letter sound that they're used to. But okay, slow. Okay. Clover slow, yes. I would absolutely agree with Clover being slow. So I don't necessarily disagree with all of those, but there were some where I'm like, maybe we could reconsider. But sometimes I do wonder if pacing is subjective, especially when it comes to like how much you relate to the subject matter, because if you relate more or if it's something that you're very interested in, then I feel like the pacing may seem faster just because you want to know more. You keep flipping the pages because you're just so immersed in the experience and you just love the subject matter so much. So sometimes I wonder if that messes me up, if that makes me think that something is slower or faster, because like I said, I did not like Behind Her Eyes, so I thought it was slower. But then I also really enjoyed Soul of the Deep on the other end, and I thought that it was faster than it was just because I kept flipping the pages because I was interested in the subject matter. So I don't know. Maybe that's something that I need to think about a little bit more so that I'm not like biased, I guess, based on my experiences and what I like. So yeah, when I talk about this stuff, take my word with a grain of salt. You don't want to just base everything on my opinion. I always want to encourage you to read the blurb, read non-spoiler, spoiler-free reviews for the book. And if there's anybody else on YouTube, on BookTube, who has reviewed a book, I would definitely encourage you to watch them as well so that you have a bit more of an understanding of the books that you are about to dive into so that it's not just my opinion because, oh my gosh, I don't want to be that guy who encourages you to get a book and then you hate it and then it's my fault because you hate it. I would hate that. Okay, so page number less than 300, right? 15, more than 300, or 300, 499. Wait a minute. Less than 300, 60%. 300 to 499, 10, or 40%. So I guess it goes to like 500 to 699, and then it keeps going up that way on the pie chart. So I didn't read anything over 500 pages or over. So eek. I know that I read Christine last year, and I think that's the only one that goes over 500. But typically, I do like to read books that are less than 300. Let's look at which ones were over 300. Okay. This one is deceptive. We are also good at smiling. This one is deceptive. This one is over 300, but so it's written in verse, right? So it's like poetic, it's poetry. The sections are very short. So this is a book that if you just have the text side by side, kind of formatted like a typical novel that you would read, then this would certainly be fewer pages than it shows here. Yes, as far as page count, it is 320 pages, but just know that when you get this book, if you get this book, that you're going to get through it a lot quicker just because of how everything is laid out. Anxious People, okay. Behind Her Eyes and The Red Tent. Okay, cool. Wow, perfect 400. I didn't realize that. But I read the ebook for this, so the pages are off anyway. But okay. Okay. I wasn't sure which ones were up there, and I imagine all of the children's books, of course, bring this percentage up. But I think the last time I looked at this before I added the children's books that were missing, this was half and half. And there were some children's books that were already included in this. So I did actually read a bit more of these. If you do exclude the children's books that are just like palate cleansers for me. Fiction and nonfiction. Yeah, this seems right. 5 nonfiction books. What? Okay, well, I mean, I guess the alphabet is nonfiction. I guess these books are true. It's not lying. It's just funny. It's like, oh, nonfiction, the alphabet. Okay. But yeah, I mean, all of these are the memoirs that I read, and all of these are wonderful. Look at all the 5 stars. Like I said, I have not read a bad memoir yet. So if you know of any memoirs that are bad, I said that I wouldn't hate read a book for this channel, but I am curious if there's one that's notoriously bad. If I read it, if I would rate it below 5 stars, just because I am so captivated and touched a lot of the time by these different memoirs. But also the subject matter hits me too. I'm Afraid of Men and As Familiar as Family, and even Lift. Just because of motherhood, I am interested in parenthood in general. So all of these were very touching, and it's just so funny that this is considered a nonfiction book. That is hilarious. Okay, so now we are looking at the genres that I read. Children's books, I can understand why that is higher, and it'll probably get even higher by the end of the year, just because, like I said, I do use children's books as palate cleansers. And this is not a children's book. I will go ahead and tell you that. I think the love bug is missing in this because I did look at this before I recorded, and it is. So the love bug is a little bit older, I guess. Maybe closer to middle grade. But I would put that in here, especially above Tanya Tanya. There is a lot of sex. There's exploitation. There's war. There's violence. I would not put Tanya Tanya on a children's list. A young adult list, yes, but not children's. I don't know why this is here. I don't know why people did this. Why? What are you doing? Memoirs, we've already seen what those are because I looked at nonfiction. Young adult, this is where Tanya Tanya should be. So let's see what is young adult. Honestly, I would even put Clover in the children's list before Tanya Tanya. Clover is super neutral. It's not bad at all. There is one racial slur in the book, and it is called out really quickly. And it kind of surprised me because throughout this book, it was pretty tame, like just very vanilla, very run-of-the-mill book. But then that popped up. But it was important for the author to mention that and have racism be a part of this book just because of its overall subject matter. And it was interesting to see how the different characters reacted to that. So I would be careful with that. It's only mentioned one time, I think, but otherwise Clover is perfectly fine. When I went on the field trip to visit Dory Sanders on her farm, and she read to us, and she was so sweet. This book was advertised to us, and we were kids at the time. We were in 5th grade, so kind of in between elementary school and middle school. That, I guess, would be the age range for this. So maybe not quite children's, maybe middle grade. But these two absolutely are young adult, and I would put Tanya Tanya here too. So I have been reading mysteries and thrillers this year. Thrillers, yes. And let's look at mystery and just see if it's the same books. Mystery, yeah, I would say Anxious People is a mystery. Fantasy. Okay, Soul of the Deep, yes. I Go Quiet. Okay, yeah. Fantasy isn't one of my genres, but These two for sure. Now that I see them, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I picked these books up for different reasons other than the fact that they're fantasy. Like, I picked this one up because of the West African folklore. I was very interested in that. Two, it's a nautical book. It's about the sea, about the ocean, and I love books like that because I am a beach baby. I'm a beach child. And I also picked this up for historical fiction elements, which also ties into the folklore that I mentioned before. We are also good at smiling. The blurb was about depression, and I wanted to read it for that reason. Mental health is always something that I gravitate toward. I go quiet though. Yeah, it is a bit of a fantasy setting. It's a bit steampunk. Very cool. I love the illustrations. I know that people said that some of their children were a bit like teachers in the classroom. Some of the kids said that the illustrations were a bit scary. They weren't your typical brightly colored, fun looking illustrations, but I love them. And I love the city. It's just very gloomy looking, very, like I said, steampunk, industrial. So, yeah, I would see how this is put in a fantasy situation too, I guess just based on the environment. But the subject matter itself wasn't very fantastical. Like, kids deal with this every day, you know? They deal with their shyness and their introversion all the time. So that's not anything outrageous. I'm not going to go through all of these. I do wish that this was a little bit higher. As Familiar's Family and the Red Tent are very on the nose religious, but there are other books that I read that could fit religion as well. Again, going back to Tanya Tanya, that was a huge part of the plot. The story happened in the early 90s when there were riots that were going on in Bombay, India. At the time, it's now Mumbai. It was those who practiced Islam versus those who practiced Hinduism. There were riots around that. There were fights. There was conflict around that. And I would say that that would fit the religious category. And two, I feel like I read some other books that I myself marked as religion. So the different tags, these are just my tags. um, yeah, I mean, I don't lie, so these are all accurate. Format, these are wrong. I don't know what happens when you import, but sometimes they get these wrong. I have listened to more audiobooks than just one, and for digital, maybe that's accurate. Let me check. See, this wasn't digital for me. The Red Tent was. These three were. Um, Lyft was. So Lyft isn't here. Uh, I feel like there were more, but I'm not sure. I can't remember. So yeah, some of these stats are wrong when you import, and I make sure to use the correct format on Goodreads, so I'm not sure what the problem is there. Most read authors, Frederick Bachman, too. Yeah, he's the only one that I've read more than one of. Natasha Bowen, I read Skin of the Sea last year, and then I read Soul of the Deep this year. So between her and Frederick Bachman, I don't think I've read anybody else more than once. All of the books were in English that I read. Danish, I can't read Danish, so everything was English for me. Uh, Number of books and pages. So I did great in May, even though I'm mentioning Tanya Tanya a lot in this. Even though that book I was partially through, part of the way through. I can't word today. I was part of the way through that book already, but I still like it wasn't 475 pages worth. That book was short, so I read a lot in May, and it feels good to see a number that high because I never thought that I would be able to get to that number. I thought that I was doing great in March, even when I read 768 pages, because that was around the time that I went on a vacation to Florida. So I was in the airport and on planes a lot. So I was able to get a lot of reading in during March, but I think there were some hiccups in March later on. I think that was the month where I said I was doing good. I started great, and then I kind of fell off. But May was a great month for me. And June was pretty good too. I hit over 1,000 pages in June as well. I didn't mention that in my wrap up for June because I already, blew all the trumpets during May, but June was a good reading month too. I don't know if this month is going to be as good, July, because, like I said, I am going to focus on my writing a little bit. So this might be a month where I kind of drop a little bit, maybe go back to my February count, 358 pages. But we'll see. We'll see how July goes. Average rating 4.04. So I do give a lot of 5 stars. I feel like I'm strict, but maybe I'm not as strict as I should be, or that as I think I am, or maybe I'm just reading a lot of really good books. I don't know. But before 2023, so 2022 I had 6 5 stars, and I do plan to upload a video about those books specifically because I do want to have them on the channel and briefly review them so that you guys know what I read before this year. And I only read 12 books last year, so half of them were 5 stars. But then in 2021, when I first started reading again, it's a wonder that I even continued because I read so many flops. I DNF'd 2, I rated 1 2 stars, I rated 1 1 star, and then I read one of my friend's books back in 2021 to kind of get me back into it. And her book was okay. I might do a review of it, but I'm not sure, just because there was one part of that book that I really didn't like, and I'm afraid to talk about it. But I don't know. I'm one of those people where I'm like, if you criticize somebody, because I prefer this. I want criticism. I want it to be, I don't want to be torn down by it, but I appreciate criticism. I went to art school. I'm used to that sort of thing, but I'm never sure how somebody else will take it. And if I review a friend's book, As Familiar as Family was amazing, and I was perfectly fine reviewing it because I loved it. But then if I read a friend's book and there is a part that I really do not like about it, then I am afraid to kind of talk about it. But I don't know. If she appreciates the criticism, which I do think she does, then maybe I will review it at some point. Because I do want to review all the books that I read before 2023, before BookTube. I think that would be a good thing to do. And I've already done a few. But yeah, that's something that I'm thinking about. Anyway, that's a tangent. I'm sorry. Let's look at all my 5 stars. So if you take out the memoirs and the children's books, let's just see. So this is 1. This is 2. I bumped this up to 5 after I said I gave it 4 stars in the wrap up for this. 3. 4, 3.5, 3.5, because this is a quasi memoir. I said that in my review for it. It's fiction, but the main character is a self-insert. There's no denying it. And I do think that a lot of this was based on Sonia Henry's personal experiences. So 3.5 were not memoirs or children's books, I guess. 4, whatever, if that's what you want to say. So let's look at the 4 stars, because maybe this is a bit more. So, Love Bug, okay, another children's book. So yeah, these are not memoirs, so that's good. This one could easily be 5 stars. I need to go back through. I need to use my system, because I haven't applied this to my rating system yet. Shame on me. I advertised it to the world, and I didn't even utilize it all the time. But this might end up being 5 stars. Cotton Candy Massacre, 4 stars. This was another one that I enjoyed at the time, but again, this is not one that I would go back to a lot of the time. I feel like if I were to read the Cotton Candy Massacre now, I would bump it down because I'm just not in the mood to read this. For some reason, I was just in the mood. I wanted to read it, but right now, I don't think that I would give it the same star rating. Yes, this is another one that's on the high end of 4, I think, closer to 4.5. There was one element in this book that I wish that there was more of, and usually when there's something that I want more or I want pushed, then I do drop it a star rating. Anxious People, this is one that I reviewed using my system on my channel, and there's a reason why it's a 4-star book. For all but one category, this book was phenomenal. But there was one category that just made it drop 1 star, and it's so disappointing because Frederick Bachman is a great writer. I stand by that. I will advertise his books all the time until I'm blue in the face, and I'm going to keep reading his books and rating them, and you're going to see a lot of him on my channel. But this one, it was just one category that flopped for me. And then The Red Tent, 4 stars. I think I already mentioned it once in this video that the ending was a bit slow. But yeah, and I'm going to do a video on my 3-star ratings because I know that that's a bit polarizing, a bit of a controversial rating for some people. And then my 2s and then my 1, I don't really want to talk about these because I've talked them into the dirt already. But yeah, so this was a long video, and I'm sorry. I hope that this wasn't boring. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. But yeah, so this is my complete wrap up for the first half of the year. If you're tired of these books at this point, if you're tired of me talking about them constantly, then, you know, lucky you, because I'm not going to talk about them very much anymore until maybe the end of the year for the year-end wrap up. But otherwise, I've been Jim. You've been great. Happy reading.